the Sustainability Management Master's Program, you're answering one simple question. Do you care about your future generation? If you care about your kids, their grandkids, then you care about sustainability. And a sustainability manager is someone who has the tools to make people understand how they can contribute towards developing a sustainable world. We have both part-time and full-time students. Our curriculum is 30 hours. Instead of thesis, we have a research project course and a seminar course which provides them with the kind of research background they will need to be successful in their job. But at the same time, sustainability is not always everything about environment. It also relates to the business. They will take a sustainable business strategies course. They will take a project management course. Most of these courses are going to be taught by industry people, the people who are doing sustainability on a daily basis as a part of their job. Any organization that has a large number of employees and has a physical infrastructure, they will have to have a sustainability office. If you have the passion to develop and maintain a sustainable world, come to us and we will help you shape your passion into a career which will create an impact.
So much. That was a very good introduction. And I just want to thank everyone for, signing on today and listening and giving up your time. Time is very precious. So I really appreciate it. And for Stevens for having me. So I'll get started. All right. So as it was said, today is going to be a little bit different than probably your typical sustainability talk, but I think it's going to be really interesting. It's not the conventional, but I think it's very important. And it's about the importance of having women leadership in your STEM field to create a sustainable future. So I think today I'll give you a little more new perspectives on sustainability and its influences and how the people who are in this field can really mold it to what it needs to be. I think I can probably glaze over this slide a little bit, but I just wanted to introduce myself if it wasn't already done. So just, again, I got my master's from Roger Williams University. I actually did a 5.5-year program there where I was able to got my undergrad and my graduate there. I graduated with Tau Sigma Delta, which is just honors in, academia. I've been with H2M for 8 years. I started in the Westchester office in New York, where I was the first hire there, and I helped build that office. And now I'm helping building the architecture department here in Parsippany. So it's a really exciting time for me for starting from the beginning all over again. But New Jersey has been very kind to me, and I'm super excited. So I am a registered architect originally in New York, and I got my reciprocity in New Jersey. I was nominated for I won 30 Under 30 of Long Island Business News in 2018, which my company nominated me for, which is just such a great honor. And I'm still so shocked and thankful for that honor. I was actually this year's H2M President's Award winner. And what that means is each year H2M, out of the 500 employees, they pick an employee that really embodies what H2M is about, which is about community and giving back and just the core values that we have here. And that's really something that I am super honored to have. So that's something exciting now. And like it was said before, I'm the president of the Women's Leadership Outreach, and something that's really near and dear to my heart is, educating young females about the STEM field and the possibilities of what the future holds for them, and just making sure that they're educated in knowing that they have the opportunity as well to be in these fields. We focus specifically on middle school. It's kind of like when, that ideas of what college could be like and the most influential, but we'll do anything from, kindergarten, which is just so cute, to high schoolers that hopefully we can influence them enough to make that decision to go into a STEM field. So we'll continue on. Okay, so for today, the objectives is to understanding the meaning of designing to be sustainable. So maybe a different perspective than you already know. Number 2 is to understand the importance of having a diverse leadership team, not only for a female, but maybe, gender, race, that kind of thing. Number 3 is understand the importance of allyship. And I'll kind of explain what that is as we go on. But number 4 is identify where we as designers have fallen short in our ability to design for both genders. So I'll just give you some examples today, and hopefully you can walk away knowing a little bit more. And then number 5 is to understand that we are on the cusp of women in the workplace, and hopefully to identify a few women that are making strides in our field of sustainability. So a career in STEM, what does that, why does it matter when it comes to sustainability? So STEM or STEAM is something that's very talked about now, but when I was in school, it was like a buzzword that really wasn't as talked about. We didn't have STEM labs or STEAM rooms, stuff like that. So seeing that this is available now kind of creates this ability for, creating spaces that encourage sustainable design, encourage thinking outside the box. So again, as you know, it's science, technology, and mechanics. A lot of people say mechanics or mathematics, but I also love to say STEAM because I do think that it has art in it, especially coming from an architecture field. There's always a little bit of art. We are designers, even people in engineering and in technology, we are designers. So I think that's something I'm really going to focus on today. We are designers, and what does that mean, and what kind of responsibility do we have as designers? So for a quick minute, we're going to just talk about females in STEM. So I bet as you look around your classroom and probably your classroom in high school, there were equal amount of male and female, and that's pretty typical. I remember going to college myself and looking around, and as the numbers started dwindling, the females actually lasted longer than some of the males. And I was like, here we are, we're at the forefront. There's going to be so many females when you get out into the field. And that's true, but the problem is that we aren't retaining these females. They might start out in an architecture field, but after a few years, they fade out. And that's what we're really kind of looking into, why? Why is that a thing? Why is that happening? So it's not just in architecture, but it's in engineering and kind of the other fields as well. So unfortunately, one of the problems is really the wage gap. And this is something I almost couldn't believe. We live in 2022. I'm still living in the 2020. 2022, how is there a wage gap, right? We're all kind of equals in this, but some of the reasons why there are wage gaps is because there's a lack of leadership. There's lack of female leaders as examples, right? So typically in a workplace, you take the role of the next person, and you see someone and you follow their footsteps. Well, if there's no female up there to follow, sometimes people don't know where to put them. And there's sometimes these personal beliefs that females aren't smart in the STEM field, and that is absolutely not true. So I think it's also females' ability to not as necessarily be as assertive as men are in the negotiations. That's some of the statistics, but unfortunately it is an issue that we have been diving into more, and as we move on, we'll see some of the leaders in architecture who are diving into this and trying to figure out how do we keep people to stay and pay them right. So what does it mean to be sustainable? This is a hard question. I know that sounds crazy because we just had this is part of a series about sustainability, and it's been going on for a few years, but there's no real one answer to sustainability. When you look at one building, it's not the same sustainable as another building, and one option doesn't kind of fit all of that. So I kind of looked at my architecture and what I do. So here at H2M, we build sustainable communities. That's our motto. We build sustainable communities. And when I heard my coworker kind of pitch this idea to the client, I thought about it. I was like, I really did a green roof recently, and I have never done geothermal, though that's probably on my bucket list. And I've done some solar, but how am I building sustainable communities? And it was explained to me that it's like I'm building buildings that are able to sustain. So we almost have to break it down to that simpleness, because as you move forward in your career, you're going to realize you don't always get the green roof project, and you don't always get the geothermal, and you don't always get these new technologies, right? but what you're doing is still sustainable, and you still have to keep that in your head. So when you think about sustainable, I want you to think about the green roofs and the exciting things, but I also want you to think about able to sustain, to last, to be able to reuse these buildings. These buildings should be able to continue on for the purpose that they were meant for, or maybe even reuse for something else. And I think that that's what got me into architecture. I used to always go past old buildings and I would always say, oh, I just want to give that building a little love. Well, I think I just want to give that building a little bit of sustainability. So that's kind of what I think about as sustainable. And today I kind of want to focus in on that. We need to design to be sustainable, to last. So I'm going to kind of quiz you guys, and I won't have you answer, but in your mind, just answer, what do all of these things have in common? We have a bathroom, we have an iPhone, we have an airbag, and we have an office temperature control. Well, all of these things were technically designed or laid out and tested, right? But the problem is with all these things is that they weren't necessarily tested, designed, and thought out with women in mind. So now what do? We have to kind of rethink them, and that's not sustainable. So let's go through them a little bit. First, I'm going to go through the airbag. So not just the airbag, sorry, the crash dummy. And this might be something you guys already know, but I kind of just want to highlight it again. So the crash dummy test is kind of not geared towards women at all. It's in 1980, there was a group of females that wanted to create a female dummy because right now it's just male dominated. And it was kind of pushed aside until 2003 was the first time that we got a crash dummy that even sort of represents females and runs tests on them. And that female dummy covers about a 5% of what women's standards are. So that means that it kind of actually forms to a 12 to 13-year-old child, not an actual woman. So even with this, we don't even have the same tests done as the male dummy does. So we are even limited in some of our tests that are being done. Now, not only is this wrong for females, but if you look at the history of males as well, this dummy or this test dummy is an average male that's 171 pounds, 5'9". So if you don't fall in that category, you might be off in that of how much these car safeties are going to really save you. And the worst part about it is that was from 1960. Americans are now 26 pounds heavier than that. So that being said, we still haven't updated in that sense. So these dummies, and especially this 5% of women dummy, doesn't account for any kind of biological difference that females have. It's just a male dummy kind of pared down to something smaller. And we are not built the same. So that is something that we are failing at. And because of that, as you can read on the screen, women are 17% more likely to be killed. Now, that's not a high number, but for me to know that's life or death, that's a high number. Same with the seriously injured. 73% is a very high number when it comes to seriously injured. Think about how we're built. Our legs are shorter. We're closer to that steering wheel. Of course, our legs are going to be 79% more likely to be crushed. But not to scare you, we are moving towards a better future. So that being said, how are we doing that? Well, computer models are helping that. So that is technology that is helping us get there. Actually, Volvo just did a mid-size pregnant female test and has shown how that has affected. And that's huge. That's, above and beyond just having a female in the car, but a pregnant female and how that affects. So this is just one example of how we need to start thinking of how we solve these simple things, how we design something that is for all people, because it's not just about women. It's about maybe the elderly or children or obese. We have to think about these people. Another idea is the iPhone. So I bet a lot of you have an iPhone. How many of you have that pop socket on the back of your phone? Or they have that little ring on the back of your phone? Well, the reason why you have that is because you can't hold it, right? Well, the problem is that these phones are designed, unfortunately, by tech companies, and these tech companies have a lot of male designers. And those phones are not too big for their hands because they're hands are about 1 to 2 inches bigger than our hands as females. So it's just this idea of those simple things, right? And now you turn around and say, no, they make smaller models. Well, those smaller models don't have the capacities and the flagship features that the bigger model does. So we can settle for something smaller, but why would we want to? And we want, you know, more storage for all our pictures. So that's just how sometimes designing is kind of forgotten when you don't have to think about it, right? Because that's not a problem for the people designing it. Another idea, I don't have a slide on it, but here at H2M, we actually, the Women's Initiative just did a initiative on the construction vests. Construction vests are usually men's sizes, which, you know, they should fit all people, right? But it's very dangerous when you're on a construction site with big, heavy equipment and it's going to get caught or grabbed on something. So we found a company that makes female sized vests. Everyone got fitted and now we all have female sized vests. So it's something as simple as that, just to think about the safety of other people. So have you ever worked in an office and, you know, the females are typically cold in the office? Well, that's a design issue. So the design of our indoor climate is based on thermal comfort models that were developed in the 1960s. And I can probably say that there was less females working in the office in the 1960s. And from there, it really hasn't been improved. So they did studies that young women performing light office work are under the standard thermal zone when it comes to body comfort, and that it's something that needs to be rethought. It has to be kind of redesigned, and it doesn't necessarily just need to keep women in mind, but maybe we need to start thinking about no longer a standard, but maybe a biological reading that we could get on people in the workplace. Because when you're not comfortable in the workplace, what do? You either plug in a heater underneath, right? Or you open up a window, or you hit that thermostat. Well, we design buildings so that we have the right air circulation. It should be a sustainable unit that we're putting into these new buildings that are, you know, energy efficient. Well, they're not going to be energy efficient if you open up a window. So we're kind of fighting ourselves. We're fighting the sustainability of these features because it's just not geared right to the right people who are in the workplace. Last but not least, the plumbing count. So I'll ask you, have you ever been to a stadium, or maybe a bar, or maybe even a theater, and the women's line is so long, right? The guy will be like, okay, I'm going to the bathroom and then I'm going to go get a drink. And you're like still online, right? Well, it's because of the plumbing code. As much as it has advanced and our codes have been updating, we have to think about kind of what women are dealing with in the bathroom situation, right? So typically, we are more likely to have a child with us when we go into a bathroom. We are more likely to spend a little more time in a stall because we have to go to a stall, unlike men. We are more likely to have a monthly obligation sometimes, which you spend more time in a stall. And pregnancy can cause more frequent bathroom use. It can also, again, you're a little bit slower, you're moving a little bit different, you're a little bit bigger than you probably were before, right? And then also women are outliving men. So there's more elderly, and those elderly need more moving space. They move at a slower rate. So all these things really have to be thought about when we're doing the plumbing code. So if you look up at the plumbing code that's kind of blurry on the screen, you'll see that we're kind of equal when it comes to water closets, when it comes to lavatories. And that's not always the case that it should be. So these are the things that these are minimums, right? So we should be thinking in advance for what is going to be used in these space. How are we going to design this so that it's sustainable? So we're not having to add on a bathroom later, or, having any kind of like issues. And then the other thing is the unisex or gender neutral bathrooms. The fact that we have started thinking this way for different genders is a very exciting thing, but just by adding a gender neutral bathroom, you're now making competition for everyone to have that bathroom. Maybe the men will be more sympathetic because they'll now be in the line, but at the same time, you still have to think about those counts need to be high enough so that people can really enjoy the space, so they're not spending time online when they want to be watching a concert. So what is equality and what is equity? So I think the picture in the background is a really good example of equality and equity. And I think what we just talked about is really a good leeway into this. So equality is that everyone gets the same thing. Everyone gets a cell phone, right? Everyone gets that iPhone, that big iPhone, and that's great. So I'm not saying you can't have one, but equity is that it's one for each person. So everyone gets that, those flagship features, but to the size of their hand that it fits. Now, this is not always possible, or we would be designing so many things in so many spaces. But we do have to kind of keep equity in mind, that equality and equity are definitely different things. And sometimes one is valued more than the other. So what does this have to do with women leaders, right? When you think about sustainability, you have to think about the future. Again, able to sustain. We need to make sure that we design, that's supposed to be innovate, solve now, will sustain us for the future. And if we don't have a diverse mindset, we'll already be behind the times. So I think that it's really important to know that these people making the decisions, the people who are leading these initiatives need to have a diverse understanding of what's going on. So is architecture a sustainable career? Is this a job that women can sustain in? So I ask this question differently than you might read it. I am asking you to sustain being an architect your entire life. Funny question, because you'll probably answer yes. But then why don't we have women leaders? Why are the numbers so low? Why do the numbers drop after college? I bring this to you as something to keep in mind as you advance in your career and your education. When I started architecture school in 2008, I looked around, we were 50-50 in my class. As years went on, we weeded out and even more females lasted, as I said before. I felt like, wow, this is a time for change. But as I continued and I graduated and I stayed close with my friends, I realized a lot of people were fading out. They were no longer doing architecture. I know out of my 4 roommates in college, only 2 of us are still doing architecture. And it's because of the demand of what's being asked of us. 6 exams, 5,600 hours of interning, paid, thankfully. And I know that architects are not alone. There's a lot of fields that are similar to this. But this really causes some issues for people who, have families, who want to start a career later on in life. It's getting very difficult to do so. And this is just a very demanding career where you have to do late nights at the office. You have to go to late night meetings, but we need to start thinking around that, right? We need to be able to give these opportunities so that doesn't have to be the norm, that you have to stop doing this because it doesn't fit into your life, right? We work so that we can live and enjoy our lives, right? So we need to now have to marry the two so it can be a sustainable life. So that's just something to really think about. So I kind of want to now focus on some females that are changing the sustainable world. And I think that these females do both of what I've been really talking about, which is they're really fighting the fight of, making gender equality and making like females as leaders, but also creating amazing sustainable architecture. So a lot of these people, I don't know if you'll recognize them, but maybe now you'll start, keeping your eye out for some of this architecture here. So this is Janine Gang. She's the head and founder of Gang Studios. So they have 100 employees across Chicago, New York, and San Francisco offices. Out of their 10 principals, 4 of them are female, including Janine herself, which seems like a low number, but it's actually better than a lot of the numbers that they have reported once they kind of did a study on it. And she actually recently in the UK, they made a law requirement that companies more than 250 employees had to annually report their gender pay gaps. And that data was calculated based on a median of staff salaries. So she actually decided to do the same thing. And she realized that there was a pay gap and that females in her office were getting paid less, which is absolutely crazy for a studio that was founded by a female. But she did not hang her head low. She faced it, and she said with a small, with a small raise to the certain people, we're able to even the playing field. So she now is challenging other firms that are falling short of that. Two of them, which are big known firms, are like Foster and Partners, had a gender pay gap of 10.5%. Zaha Hadid, which is another female run, unfortunately she's no longer with us, but female run founded studio, had a 19.6% pay gap for females, which again, how can that happen in a field where she's leading it? So what does that mean? What does that say? It says that we just need to kind of run these numbers. We can't live in this world of, we're in 2022, these pay gaps don't exist. They do exist, and we need to kind of open our eyes to them. So not just focus on, female pay gaps, but Janine Gang Studios really intertwines the built work and the public awareness. She has actionable idealism is one of her strong goals, and she includes things like bird safe building techniques and experimental prairie ecosystems on rooftops, and is really just kind of excelling at these sustainable designs in architecture. So here are like three of the ones that I wanted to highlight. I could probably highlight, I could do a whole PowerPoint on these architects that I'm showing you, but I just kind of want to show you what these female leaders are doing in this industry that are just kind of above and beyond. So the Solar Carve in New York City, I don't know if any of you have been to it, but it's along the High Line, and it's really about, bringing density into an area, but not creating an area that feels dense. So as you can see on the top right picture, she really worked to get light and natural air and airflow into this area that is normally very heavy. So by pulling the building back, she was able to create an environment that's sustainable and good on the ground, but also create density into a city. So that's one way that she's succeeding. The bottom picture is Beloit College Powerhouse. So this is kind of like the literal way of sustainability. So this was a coal factory. Coal, not very sustainable, right? So, and now it's turned into like a 3-in-1 health center, recreation, and student union. So with this, it has a large public and former power plant is now environmentally conscious, using the river water as a heat exchange and introducing new green roof space for gathering. So it kind of took something that was, old and probably just going to stay there and not do anything, and turned it around completely and gave it back to the community and made it, sustainable. So, and then the one on the right, I actually just visited Chicago this past year, and this building is even cooler in person. So this is the Aqua Tower in Chicago. And when I think of Gang Studios, this is actually the building I think of, so I had to put it in there. But the way that the plates are laid, I don't think a single one is the same. And the way that they do it is to make sure that light and air are coming in and views are coming in coming in for all people. And again, they really do an idea about, creating a density without being dense. So it's a really cool project. And again, I really encourage you to look more into these projects alone. I'm barely doing them justice, or these studios, because I think that they're doing some really cool things in the field of sustainability. So the next person I really want to talk about is Billy Stein. So she focused on families, and that's a big topic, in architecture, especially now as my friends are starting to have kids, and it's a question of, are you coming back to work, right? You're gonna have a kid, or are you gonna come back to work? And H2M is amazing in the fact of they do flex work, and they do part-time, and they really encourage you to come back. but they're really good at that, and that's something I love about H2M. But here's an architect that's very prominent, and I'll show you some of the work that they're doing, and you'll recognize. But they're speaking up about families and saying, it doesn't have to be a work environment that's late hours and not conducive to families, but it's make space for families. And why do people leave the profession? It's because somehow or other they're faced to ask the question, is it family or profession? And that should not be a question. And that's kind of, I think, what I've been getting to at this time. So when I was doing this research and I saw this actual quote, it was pretty exciting. So just a little bit of architecture that she's doing. So they actually won the Obama Library. So I mean, talk about a big project, right? And a big honor to do. And there was a lot of designs, a lot of sustainable designs that were submitted, and they were selected. So she's part of a firm. It's her and her husband. So she is one of the founders, but the Obama Library is going to be LEED Platinum, and it's all about civic engagement, which again is sustainable and just for a great cause. So the next one on the right is the design, Andlinger Center for Energy and the Environment. So this is actually at Princeton University. So I kind of want to give you one again that's close. I like to do things that are a little close in case you want to visit. But this is again a LEED Silver, and not only is it, about the environment, because look at the name of it, but it's also, it has high sustainable construction within it. So again, I encourage you to kind of research a little bit more about that. But and then the last is the Tata Consultancy Services in Mumbai. And so what I really liked about this one is that they used a lot of local materials and things that were important to the culture, which is huge in sustainability. Shipping in materials that are from far away is just an easy way to hurt the ecosystem. So just by really honoring what is around them and using what is there, they do a great job with sustainability. They also did a women weave program where it was a local organization that kind of weaved all the carpets that are in this building. And I thought that was kind of cool that they were able to incorporate the community to kind of have buy-in on this project. So my last architect that I want to talk about is Elizabeth Diller. So she is part of a DSNR, which is Diller, Schaefer, and Renfro architect. So what I loved about her is that she's kind of part of this bigger, she isn't self-run, but she's part of a group that is really kind of doing cool things. And again, I'll show you some of their work, and I think you'll recognize it. But she actually is nominated for Time Magazine's annual list of world's most influential people, which is a big deal because the only other time an architect was on that was Bjarke Ingels in 2016. And not only is she the only architect, but she's a female. So I think that she has a really great TED Talk. So if you guys ever have time, she kind of talks about architecture in a really cool way. And again, when I get to the next slide, I'll kind of get into it. But so she's kind of at the forefront of not enough female architectures making it into the workplace. Again, it's kind of just reinforcing what I was saying in the beginning of like, we're sitting next to each other in class, but we'll be seeing each other, down the road at these networking events. So she has kind of started to really focus around that. And I also love that she's this is a quote from her. So no longer are we seeing a singular heroic voice that Guinness's person that gets a lightning bolt from God. Instead, we are collaborating of different sorts, like collective of my own firm. So it's kind of this idea that it's not like this one architect and he's doing a great thing, or it's this one person. It's about collaboration. And that's kind of what we've been talking about this whole time, how we have to have so many voices at the table, and it's no longer just one person, winning that award or really getting the spotlight, but coming together to make sure that it's designed for multiple people. So I really enjoyed that quote. So one of her works is the picture on the left, the High Line. So you guys being so close to New York City. You guys have probably visited the High Line. So so the idea about the High Line, so this was a rail system that was in the city for so long, and a lot of big developers wanted this site, right? They wanted to build. This was very expensive real estate for them. So, but the fact that it was kind of given back to the public is such a sustainable idea. And ever since this has been kind of created, it has sparked this environmental renaissance, I want to say, in different cities. A lot of people you'll see are starting to try to mimic what's happening here, giving this big, large space back to the community in a very sustainable way, creating green space in a space that's very heavily dense. So, and then their studio is very known for kind of doing live installations. And they actually recently did one. It was called the Mile Long Opera on this, which I again was part of this video I watched. And it's just kind of saying, like, after they created this High Line Park, what happened was all these places wanted to build up around it. That used to be like vacant, and it created this life again to this area. But Elizabeth Diller really focuses on reclaiming space and giving it back to the public and how important public space is. She actually tries to protect spaces from architecture, which I think is like the opposite of what I should be saying, but I kind of love it at the same time, where, she's really encouraging the environment to be a part of it. She calls it architecture. So, and this High Line is kind of like the entrance into the city. So, the one to the right is the David Rubenstein Forum at Chicago, University of Chicago. And I kind of wanted to show this one because of just its simple sustainability. They're just choosing the right decisions when they're designing. So this is a auditorium multi-purpose space for meetings and workshops and lectures. But what they're doing is they have, again, that bird safe natural glazing. They have LED lighting systems. They have radiant conditioning. They have rainforest harvesting. And it's just really creating a healthier environment. They were thinking about the Green Island effect by, with green roofs. So it's a pretty cool looking building, very modern, but all the technologies inside are just kind of, just blowing the minds of sustainability. So, as an architect, you would just love to be a part of a building like this, to be able to explore all those different fields of, how can we make the right decisions for the world that we live in. So another one that I didn't focus on is she's done the Shed, which is pretty popular in New York City as well. She's done the MoMA and in New York City, and it's known for a lot of others. So again, I encourage you to kind of just dive into more of what she's done. She's done a really great TED Talk about that architecture that she talks about, and it will really get you thinking about, spaces a little bit differently. So after I speak about that, now allyship. So what do we do now? So allyship is an interesting term that we at H2M are really passionate about. So not only are we giving females a voice by having this women's leadership program, but we're asking, the men around us to be allies, to really encourage us to go to, these meetings, invite us to the table. Something that happened in one of our talks here at H2M was, a mom spoke up and she said, allyship to me is being invited to the night meeting, the client meeting at night, or being invited to dinner with a client, or a speaker series at night, or maybe even a trade show. But she goes, a lot of times I don't get that invite because people feel like, they're burdening me because I have a child at home, or, I'm a single mom, or anything like that. But by not being offered that invite is hurting me more than anything else. It's not being rude by asking. I can make a schedule. I can have someone babysit. Like, this is important to me. So it's about inviting people to the table and making sure that they're heard and they're getting the same as other people. So it's about thinking outside the box. We have to think about the things we have now and the need to be revamped with women in mind. And when we design, solve, and construct the future, we think beyond limits of what we personally know. So I ask you to be allies on this journey to sustainability so that we can get the best sustainable future. So in my closing, my goal is not only to sit at the table, but I want to make sure the table I sit at, the chair I sit in, the pen I use, the iPhone I communicate on is all made for us. Lastly, we are lucky that we are no longer fighting for equal rights to be fighting for equal rights. We need to be part of the data, the records, the history, and the numbers. No longer should we be a new concept of females in the workplace. Just because we don't have a consistent road that is of the norm doesn't mean we don't bring value. So that is my closing. So in that closing, I just want you to kind of think of sustainability a little bit different, and it's only going to make us stronger if we're all at the table. Thank you.